afternoon, ladies. Thank you for joining me for a glimpse into the world of human-computer interaction, creating problems just so that we can solve them, and making things way more complicated than they have any right to be. My name is Stefan de Jager, and allow me to be your guide as we try to become more efficient programmers in the most inefficient way possible. I hate wasting time. I think this is why I'm always so early to everything and hate being late for anything. Growing up, I was taught that you can steal my money because I'll always be able to make more, but don't steal my time because I can never get that back. I have this idea that if I'm just able to be efficient enough, if I can just find the right productivity tip, then I'll finally have enough time to get to everything. Meet every deadline, attend every event, reply to every message, finish everything on my to-do list, or even catch up on every new JavaScript framework. Who of you have seen those things online and on social media about optimization, about how to have the optimal morning routine? You know, 3 a.m. wake up followed by 30 minutes of yoga as the sun comes up, 1 hour workout session, 10-kilometer swim, and all of this before breakfast. That needs to be exactly 36.3 grams of protein, followed by a cold shower and cold plunge and another 30 minutes of stretching. Okay, maybe some of what I've just said is completely made up, but nevertheless, hopefully you get the idea. This idea of living an optimal life is something that social media has clung to, and none of us are safe from it. So, when I first entered the world of coding, it was almost inescapable that the first thing I wanted to do, the first thing I wanted to learn, was how to code better, how to code faster, because being a efficient programmer was the key to solving all of my problems. A few naive Google searches later, and I found my answer: keyboard shortcuts. The internet is filled with these tips and tricks for keyboard shortcuts, mouse macros, and workflow optimizations. I had to think about why having and using keyboard shortcuts is so much better than just using my mouse. I mean, I can click on the button. Why do I need to memorize this complicated shortcut? The answer that I sort of came up with, well, at least for me, it comes down to decreasing the time my hand is spending floating between my keyboard and my mouse. You know, when you're working, it's, oh, I want to click on a button, so move my hand, click, move my hand back, keep working, move my hand, click, move my hand back, sort of decreasing that time. Moving my hand between my keyboard and my mouse takes a very small amount of time. But if I code for 8 hours a day, those fractions of time add up. I did a very accurate experiment and decided to measure how long it takes me to move my hand to my keyboard and my mouse, and just how many times per day I do this. I found that on average, we waste about 24 minutes every day with our hands just hovering in the air. It may not seem like a lot, but 24 minutes is an incredible amount of time. Can you imagine if all of that time happened at once at the start of your day? You know, wake up, get some coffee, pet the cat, sit down, open your laptop, and boom. For 24 whole minutes. Then you'll see it's quite a long time. If you still don't believe me, just try holding your hand up for 24 minutes and, we'll see. By now, I've hopefully convinced all of you that every day we waste a lot of time, and that this wasted time is totally unacceptable. But now's the time that I need to sort of ask an important question. Why? Why do we care about being efficient? And what's wrong with not being efficient? The simple answer that most people jump to immediately is, well, I don't want to waste time. But what's so wrong with a bit of wasted time? I want to take a quick segue My job as a speaker right now is not only to educate, entertain, and to inspire, it is to, it is to impart upon all of you an idea, something that may not necessarily change your life from today, but might change how you think about certain things in the future. With that said, the goal of this talk isn't to answer any of these questions about efficiency. I mean, hell, even if I had answers, you probably shouldn't listen to some 20-something-year-old just because they're standing on a stage with a microphone strapped to their face. The goal of my talk is simply to help you ask these questions for yourself. Along the way, I'll share my opinions, let you know what I think, feel, and have learned over the years. All of these realizations that I've had sadly came much later than me trying to kill my mouse, and so many of the attempts that you will soon see were done under the idea of needing to be more efficient. Now, the journey of me trying to kill my mouse didn't quite start out like that. The idea was to be more efficient, and I had determined that the best way would be to learn keyboard shortcuts. So I did that. I set out to learn the shortcuts of the various tools that I used in the hope that at some point I might never need to touch my mouse again. Perfect, right? Problem solved. Well, just a bit of foreshadowing. If it really was that easy, I wouldn't have much more to talk about. Turns out learning keyboard shortcuts is quite difficult. They're not always that intuitive, and something like Control Shift B and Control Alt B are easy to mix up. I've made a quick example for those of you not quite getting my point. Here we have VS Code, the IDE of choice for many people, and we start by writing some code. Let's say a basic function. Now, for this example and this explanation, the code doesn't matter, so please stop reading my slide. Pretend we have written some code, so we need to Control S to save it. But I forgot that there's this silly auto formatter that's on set up that isn't quite correct. And so we actually need to Control Z to undo and then Control Shift S to save without formatting. But we've made this function, we actually need to use it somewhere. And so we Control B to open the File Explorer menu and do a bunch of up arrows and down arrows and enter to get to the file we want. But before we use the function, let's actually commit our previous changes because, you know, source control. So Control Shift G to open the source control display and do a bunch of tabs and shift tabs to make a new branch and get to where we want to be. All of these commands are on Windows. What about Mac? Is it Command? Is it Option? I don't know. The only Mac I care for is the big one. All of these commands are difficult to learn and remember. So I set out to find some other solution, some other way that I could call myself an efficient programmer. I had to think about my goal. See, there's nothing in my goal that says that I had to not use my mouse. Remember, my goal is to decrease how much time my hand spends between my keyboard and my mouse. So what if taking my hand off my mouse as much as possible? So instead of that, what if I put my hand on my mouse as much as possible? The first taste of what the ultra mouse life was like came from a simple mouse with just 2 extra buttons on the side. Nothing special, but it allowed me to do 2 extra actions other than left and right click, which means I had 2 extra actions I could do while keeping my hand on the mouse. This felt great, but it was far from the end. I had only just started. Behold, the second mouse on my ultra mouse journey. Ladies and gentlemen, I now introduce you to the Logitech MX Master 3S, one of the best mice ever created. For full clarity and transparency, I am not in any way sponsored and or affiliated with Logitech. However, if someone from Logitech is listening, hit me up. For those of you who don't know just what the Logitech MX Master 3S is capable of, Consider it like the Ferrari of mice and the gold standard of what a productivity mouse can be. With it, I now had the ability to copy, paste, backspace, enter, comment, and uncomment code, access my clipboard, take screenshots and screen recordings, and turn my cursor into a cool pointer, and do custom actions based on which application I'm in, plus a whole heap of other amazing features. Needless to say, I am a complete fanboy of this mouse and everything that it can do. But for the goal I had in front of me, it just wasn't enough. Enter the MMO mouse. For those of you who aren't hardcore gamers and don't know what this is or why you would need it, the MMO mouse is like a calculator glued to a mouse. But instead of crunching numbers, it's for casting magic, swinging swords, and yelling, "For the Horde!" faster than your enemies can blink. It's got 12 buttons on the side, plus a modifier, so actually 24, and it's used so gamers can use their thumbs to launch fireballs, heal allies, pet virtual wolves, and open a menu all at once. It's basically the Swiss Army knife for nerds in armor. The MMO mouse felt like the answer to all of my prayers. With it, I could do almost every action and every keyboard shortcut I could think of. I could backspace, enter, copy, paste, comment, and do 19 more things. It's about here that I started to think maybe this was going a bit too far. See, the keyboard is an awesome invention, and I love how it works, so I don't feel good about taking all of this responsibility away from it. Maybe keeping my hand on the mouse as much as possible wasn't necessarily the answer I was looking for. So maybe it was time to kill my mouse. I studied engineering, which means I would describe myself as having the engineering spirit. The problem with the engineering spirit is that when it's combined with the right amount of chaos and just enough caffeine, you get into the mindset of what I like to call making things as complicated as humanly possible. Way more complicated than they have any right to be. Being a bearer of the engineering spirit and a caffeine addiction strong enough to kill a small horse, I set out to make my solution as complicated as possible. To really over-engineer it. And what better way than with some good old-fashioned eye and face tracking? The plan was simple. Set up something to track my eye movements to turn it into mouse movements. And set up something to track my face to turn my blinks into clicking. That way I can look around at things and just blink to click on them. And before you think too deeply about the solution, no, I didn't think about scrolling. I clearly didn't think very far with this plan. The history of eye tracking is a surprisingly long and interesting one, involving invasive and painful contact lenses and even some cocaine. It started as early as 1879, but luckily I'll be focusing on more modern eye tracking methods, and so sadly, no cocaine for me. In the field of eye tracking, there are two main types. We have wearable eye tracking, where, you guessed it, wear some device that has cameras with a close-up look at your eyes and how they're moving. You also have webcam-based eye tracking. This is where the camera is much further away from you. Naturally, this form is much easier to implement, but results in much less accuracy. I had a look into wearable eye tracking and sort of what I'd need to do to get my hands on a device like that. This is where I discovered the Tobii Glasses X, a modern-looking wearable eye tracking device. All seemed great, but sadly my dreams of using the Tobii Glasses X were totally crushed when I found the price. Let's just say, it's safe to say I have found well over 150,000 reasons why I wouldn't be using them. Seeing the financial failure of wearable eye tracking, I decided to give webcam-based eye tracking a go. I found this cool site that lets you demo webcam-based eye tracking because I love overcomplicating things, but no amount of caffeine will ever convince me to implement my own eye tracking. So I have a quick recording of me doing the demo so that I can actually talk without needing to focus on things. Once accessing your camera, it starts by running through a little calibration sequence, which basically involves you having to stare at this red dot as it moves across your screen. I've sped this up a ridiculous amount because it takes like 2.5 minutes of just staring at a red dot. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I'm assuming that every time you stare at the dot, it takes a picture, so we can sort of interpolate where your eyes have to be for depending on where you're looking. See, it does take long. Once it's done, it loads up a random website for you to test your eye tracking on. On this time, I got a reading test website, and so I decided to take the test. You can see that little blue dot is where I'm actually looking. Now, I'm trying to read this whole paragraph. I'm going word for word, and I'm reading the paragraph. You'll see that it is not exactly the most accurate thing ever, and every time I blink, that's when it does that like dip that it does. I'm not sure if they considered eyes closed for an eye tracking system. The problem with eye tracking is that it ultimately just isn't accurate enough. See, I plan to use this to replace my mouse cursor, and so I need to hover over small buttons and between letters in words. So this accuracy just isn't enough. Needless to say, eye tracking with any normal human budget just isn't going to work. But maybe there's still hope for my whole face tracking clicking idea. So for clicking, I set up a face tracking script to analyze my eye regions to detect when I'm blinking. I used the dlib library in Python. It's a computer vision library. It's a computer vision library with a pre-trained model. So even my talk has some AI in it. The model can detect 68 points or landmarks on a human face, so nose, eyes, ears, jawline. If you think 68 points is impressive, your iPhone, although it uses some slightly different techniques, uses about 30,000 landmarks for its facial recognition, but sadly I'm stuck with 68. Each eye has 6 specific landmarks associated with it. And using those, you can calculate something called eye aspect ratio, or EAR for short. It's basically a fancy way of saying how open or closed is your eye, and it's perfect for detecting blinking. EAR can be calculated like this. Measure the vertical distances between the upper and lower eyelids. So in this case, it would be something like a P5 to P1 and a P4 to P2, and measure the horizontal distances, so something like P3 to P0. And the formula is just the sum of the vertical distances divided by 2 times the horizontal distance. Then, if your EAR value is above the threshold or some arbitrary threshold, you assume the eye is open. If it's below, you assume the eye is closed. Sounds easier, right? Well, the first problem was figuring out the difference between an intentional blink and just sort of the ones you do when your eyes get dry. My first plan to solve this was left wink equals left click. That way, at least when I blink, it's hopefully both my eyes closing at the same time. Problem is, turns out I'm terrible at winking. My other eye kept closing in like sympathy or something, and no amount of ear threshold adjustment got to where I could reliably detect blinks. The second plan was to blink with both eyes and then use long blinks for one type of click and a shorter blink for another. So instead of just checking if the ear value is above or below the threshold, I now recorded the number of frames so that I could figure out how long the eye was closed for. That failed too, not because it was a bad idea, but because I had some, let's call them technical difficulties. All of this experimenting using the different mouse types and my rabbit hole into eye tracking took just over 3 weeks. For the more observant among you, this experimenting clearly isn't optimal. It's not efficient. It's about here that I started to question this whole needing to be efficient idea. I mean, it's clearly quite inefficient to become efficient. A paradoxical idea, yes, but bear with me. When inventing the light bulb, do you know what's one thing you learn a lot more about? How not to invent the light bulb, and how to invent light bulbs that don't work. It's the same in software development. Take the process of creating a fast, bug-free, scalable program. You don't get there on your first try. You get there by writing lots of clunky, buggy, over-engineered code that crashes, times out, or eats all of your memory. Every crash logged, every angry user report is a lesson in what not to do. And through all of that inefficiency, we learn to create something truly efficient. If you're sitting here thinking, no, that's wrong, I write perfect code all the time, stop kidding yourself. If it was true, we would have no need for QA, UAT, SIT, or pre-prod. Testers would be right out of a job. Better yet, why need pull requests? Let's just force push straight to main and have it auto-deployed into production. Sounds easy, right? Clearly, a terrible idea and clear evidence that even things we do every day, things that we're good at, can still be inefficient. I would like to propose another solution to this efficiency problem. What if, instead of trying to be efficient, or instead of running away from inefficiency, something we know is impossible, we learn to embrace it? What would happen? How would we feel? Would the world really end if we weren't efficient? It's these questions that inspired the next stage of my journey to kill my mouse. Let me take you on that journey. Imagine you are lying in bed. It's winter time, and so your face is slightly cold, sticking out from under your blankets. You're comfortable, you're warm, and you are very tired. See, you've just spent the last 4 hours after an 8-hour workday fighting with eye tracking, trying to get it to work. Your mind is filled with things you can try, things you can do differently. What if this and what if that are the proverbial sheep you count as you try to fall asleep? This was me. At this point, I knew eye tracking was a bust, but I didn't know what else to try. If only I had a thing that, oh, time. For those of you holding your hand in the air for 24 minutes, your time is up. You can put them down and now start working. See, it is quite a long time. If only I had something that I could point at my screen and my mouse can go there. That way, or, that would be perfect. Like a Wii remote, right? If I could connect a Wii remote to my computer and have it follow my mouse, then I could just duct tape it to my head and boom, hands-free mouse. You can tell it was late and I clearly wasn't thinking all that straight, but I was onto something. Wii remotes are quite interesting pieces of technology. They're surprisingly advanced for things we just throw into the hands of little kids who then throw them at the TV in an unfortunate tennis accident. Did you know that you don't need that bar to control your Wii remote? I used to think that Wii remotes work by sending information to that bar, which then figures out where they are and where the mouse needs to be. Instead, all that bar is actually doing is emitting infrared light that your Wii remote uses to see where the TV is and orientate its position around. Instead of that bar, you can actually use 2 candles placed at the base of your TV, about as far apart as the width of the bar, and they emit just enough infrared light for you to use, or for your Wii remotes to use, to see where the TV is. I loved this idea, but wasn't a fan of needing to have 2 lit candles for me to use my mouse while working. I mean, my code is already enough of a fire hazard. Luckily for me, Wii remotes are very interesting pieces of technology and rely on another piece of tech to figure out their orientation. It's called an IMU, an inertial measurement unit. It's the same device used by your phones, autonomous vehicles, drones, PlayStation controllers, and basically any device that needs to detect motion. Most IMUs consist of two main devices. We have accelerometers that measure linear acceleration, so how fast something speeds up or slows down in a straight line, usually along an X, Y, and Z axis. It works by detecting tiny shifts in a suspended mass inside the chip. And it's great for sensing vibration or just general movement, like your phone knowing when it's being picked up or turned. A gyroscope, on the other hand, measures rotational velocity, how fast something is spinning. It uses a vibrating structure to detect changes caused by the Coriolis effect, and it's used in anything from keeping drones stable and enabling smooth motion in VR headsets. Both of these devices, plus some scary math, come together to give us yaw, pitch, and roll measurements. During my time in engineering, I was lucky enough to have a module dedicated to IMUs and the pursuit of orientation estimation. So I'd done a project before where I needed to program an IMU and use it. That's when I tapped into one of the greatest resources known to humankind. Not Google, not Stack Overflow. Pause for dramatic effect. I asked a friend. His name's Johan. He's one of my best friends. We studied engineering together, but crucially, he understands the math without crying. With our combined brain power, we managed to get the IMU to take basic readings. I then used this basic IMU code and combined it into something that would finally, hopefully, be able to, once and for all, kill my mouse. I took the IMU and connected it to an ESP32, a little microcontroller with built-in Wi-Fi that's slightly more expensive than a cup of coffee and slightly less caffeinated. This ESP receives the IMU data, receives the yaw, pitch, and roll data. Once I have this orientation data, it passes it along over Wi-Fi to another ESP. For the Wi-Fi transmission, I used ESP Now. It's a connectionless protocol that allows ESP32 devices to talk to each other. It's developed by some company called Espressif or whatever. And it's perfect for this type of real-time application. It's fast, it's low latency, and it doesn't require network setup. The second ESP is connected to my laptop via USB cable. And on the laptop, I have a Python script running that listens to the serial port so that the parsed data it gets from the ESP can be parsed into XY mouse movements. So to sum it up, ESP1 ESP1 reads data, gives it to ESP1 reads the IMU data from the IMU and passes it over ESP Now. ESP2 takes the IMU data and passes it over serial to my laptop, and a Python script runs on the laptop, takes that IMU data and turns it into XY mouse movements. Along with mouse movement, I also still needed to figure out how to click my mouse. I decided to use the caps lock key on my keyboard because I'm under 50 and don't plan on having any internet arguments, so I won't really need it. I coded the Python script, so in addition to moving my mouse, I can also quick tap caps lock and quick tap caps lock for left click and long press it for right click. I now still had one problem left to solve. I needed to put this on my head. See, the IMU turns movement into mouse movement, and so I needed to fit it on something that can move while I use my keyboard. And my head is perfect for that. If I can fit the IMU on my head, then I could move my head to control my mouse and click with caps lock since my hands are already on the keyboard anyway. So I made this. Let me show you its features. I took the cheapest headlamp I could find, 120 Rand. I ripped out all of its insides and filled it with the ESP and IMU. To get power to this is a little bit tricky, but luckily, sexy, right? Luckily, the ESP is powered with 5 volts, which is the same voltage given by the USB ports on your laptop or even a power bank. So if I plug it into a power bank and put it here, then I can use it without needing to be tethered to my laptop. I also have, on the second ESP, I have a little calibration button. So if my IMU ever decides to go all Skynet on me and give me weird values, I can just recalibrate it and at the same time move my mouse to the middle of my screen. So if I switch to actual code that you all came here to see, now we hope this works. Let me just close this so I don't spill on my stuff. Oh, I'm sorry if you can't see me. Let me just plug this in. Where's my mouse? And if we run this and recalibrate, hopefully I can now move my mouse with my head. I'm not sure if you can see that. Which means that if I'm being a super efficient programmer, I can start working. I'm being a super efficient programmer, don't worry. So now it's gone really weird and it's just going off to the left, so I can recalibrate it and bring it back to the middle. And then I can go off to the left again. Sweet. Let's try that one more time. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So now I can hit caps lock to click and long press it for my right click. I could go get some more things. Get some more things. And really just be an all-round efficient programmer. I don't like this is some next level stuff. It's not perfect, but it works surprisingly well for something that started as a what if I strapped a Wii remote to my head experiment. It dawned on me that what I've basically made here is just an overcomplicated computer mouse, but we're way past the point of no return. This small setup turns the motion of my body into computer input, which feels like a small step towards becoming a cyborg, which, let's be honest, was probably the goal all along. From an optimization and efficiency point of view, all of this has been a massive waste of time, money, and energy. This experimenting has taken the better part of 4 months, and let's be honest, I haven't achieved all that much. So, after all that, all the mice, but eye tracking, candles, Wii remotes, and duct tape, did I become more efficient? Well, no, not really. What I did become was someone with a slightly strange collection of hardware, a better understanding of human-computer interaction, and a whole lot more appreciation for how complicated simple things can be. See, I started this journey believing that if I just became efficient enough, I'd unlock the secret to productivity. But chasing efficiency for its own sake is a trap. If you focus entirely on being efficient, you might never get anything done because you're too busy optimizing to actually produce. Alan Watts, a British philosopher, once said, if we are unduly absorbed in improving our lives, we may forget altogether to live them. Now, I've been told I'm not allowed to go too deep into the philosophy of life during this talk, but if you would like to do that, come find me outside, get me one of the free beers, and we can talk. But hopefully you get my point. Sometimes the best way to improve is to stop worrying about improvement. Get something done first, and then you can find the most efficient way to do it. So the question isn't, how can I be the most efficient? The question is, Is the time I'm spending trying to be efficient worth the time I'm saving? The answer, in my case, is a resounding no, but I had fun finding that out. And maybe that's the point. Curiosity or efficiency is great, but curiosity, creativity, and play, those are the things that move us forward. So, no, in the end, I didn't kill my mouse. But I did learn to stop chasing efficiency and to embrace the beautifully inefficient process of figuring things out. My name is Stefan de Jager. Thank you very much. And I've been instructed to ask you if you have any questions. We have a microphone for you. Yeah.
Is this on? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, how's it, man? Great
Hi.
talk.
Thank you.
I'm curious as to how much did you spend on this entire endeavor?
So, okay. Much like asking a lady her age or her weight, there are certain things you don't ask, but I will give you the full rundown. So, one ESP costs like 110, 120 Rand. I ended up buying 4 because I broke one, needed 2, and wanted a spare. The IMU is, let's say, $60, and I broke one, needed one, and wanted a spare. So there's 3. Got some basic 3D printing, so nothing special there. 120 Rand for the headlamp, couple bucks for the cable. I had a power bank, so that's free. And my hourly rate is ridiculously expensive. So I'm not actually sure. I try not to think about it.
Thank you for that. Second question. I mean, I understand the entire point or entire goal here was to eliminate the mouse, but as I was watching your talk and seeing your amazing head tracker, it dawned to me that like you could actually eliminate the keyboard as well.
Whoa. Yes, that is perfect. Previously, one of the speakers here was asked, what next? And so my answer to that question would be that. I'm going to do at some point. I don't know. I want sleep. Do we have any other questions? Can you read that for me? Have you considered? Oh no. I feel like that's the sort of thing of like throwing yourself into the deep end. So if you don't have a mouse, if the program you use physically doesn't have a mouse, truly you have to be an efficient programmer. So yes, I have thought about it, but also Vim's very scary, and I don't know how to exit Vim.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment up here.
Oh, hello.
This entire endeavor reminds me of trying to get Skyrim modding set up. You spend like an entire day getting all the mods set up, and then you're too terrified to launch the game because it might break everything.
Yes, exactly. And then halfway through, you realize maybe just playing around with tech is the point.
But I think if you had fun, then it's time well spent.
Yeah, I agree. Any other questions? Sweet. Then that is it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.